I've been a BCBA now for 17 years, and I really love functional behavior assessments, figuring out what the function of that challenging behavior is. And it's super reinforcing to me when kids and clients, adults start to use those alternative replacement behaviors. And I just love seeing that transition from a kid who is, using challenging behavior to communicate to then using a safer, more effective way to communicate. Why do we call it? So you'll hear this a lot in the literature. There was a chapter in 2012 that Al Poling and some of his students wrote, and he kind of coined the term gold standard, that like functional analysis is the gold standard of an FBA. Why do we call it experimental if it's a gold standard? And again, type your answers in the chat bar, but just kind of want to get our baseline understanding here. Why do we call it experimental if it's a gold standard? Yes, 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 yes. You're all on the right. Yes. Because we're using an experimental approach, Danielle, that's exactly, yes, everyone was saying the same things, but yes, that's exactly it. We call it an experimental analysis because, in its most traditional sense, the functional analysis is an experiment. We are using the scientific method. And if you remember back to your, like, I think it was fourth or fifth grade when I was growing up in Arizona, but in the science curriculum, we learned about hypotheses, testing hypotheses, dependent variables, and independent variables. And it was a very basic understanding in fourth or fifth grade about those things. But we start with a hypothesis. What do we think this behavior, what function is it serving? What purpose is it serving? And then we test that function, and that's the experiment. It's not, when we use the word experimental analysis, colloquially, people are going to think like experimental cancer treatment or experimental. And so I would say use that term in this space with other behavior analysts. But when you're talking to caregivers, stakeholders, insurance companies, I would avoid the term experimental analysis because they're probably not thinking back to their fourth or fifth grade science class where they learned about the scientific method.